I phoned him up and I sort of said, "Hello, Barry. It's Cliff Richard here." He said, "Cliff, g'day, mate." And he said, "Oh, I'm so glad you called." He said, "The band and I have been such fans of yours." I went, and then I thought to myself, I bet. Anyway.
For decades, Barry Gibb and Cliff Richard were two of the biggest names in music, admired by millions around the world. But behind the fame, success, and unforgettable songs, there were stories few people ever heard.
He would stand at the back of the audience. He couldn't show his emotions. He would, you know, you'd see the look in his eye. That was good. He had lived a lifestyle that, you know, very few of us even knew about. You know, you don't have to look too far. You know?
Now, at 79, Barry Gibb is finally opening up about the truth behind his relationship with Cliff Richard, the private conversations, the struggles, the respect between them, and the moments that stayed hidden for years. What really happened behind the scenes, and why has Barry decided to speak now after all this time? Join us in this video as we reveal what Barry Gibb shared. A friendship built on respect and survival. After decades of friendship, admiration, and quiet distance, Barry Gibb has finally opened up about what Cliff Richard truly meant to him. Now, 79 years old, the last surviving member of the Bee Gees reflected with honesty and emotion on a connection that has lasted for more than half a century in the constantly changing world of music. For years, fans wondered about the relationship between the two legends. Both were among the most influential voices in pop history, yet they seemed to belong to very different musical worlds. Barry, never known for speaking carelessly, has now chosen this stage of his life to share the truth about Cliff Richard and the impact their journeys had on one another. "Cliff was one of the first artists who made me believe you could be decent and famous at the same time," Barry said, while reflecting on their early meetings during the swinging 60s. At a time when many stars were consumed by the pressure and chaos of fame, Cliff stood apart because of his calm nature, humility, and strong moral values. He never lost his faith, even when the business tried to break him. I respected that. For Barry, who witnessed the temptations and heartbreak that often came with superstardom, Cliff's steady character felt rare. In many ways, he saw Cliff's behavior as a quiet act of rebellion against the darker side of show business. While others chased attention and excess, Cliff stayed grounded in who he was. Barry also admitted that Cliff Richard's success inspired young British artists like himself and his brothers to dream beyond their limits. "When we were still trying to find our sound, Cliff had already conquered the charts," Barry recalled. "He showed us that you didn't have to be American to make it big. You could be from England or from anywhere, and the world would still listen." Those words carry even more weight today, considering what the Bee Gees would later achieve. Barry and his brothers eventually became worldwide icons, shaping pop music, disco, and an entire cultural era. But in Barry's eyes, Cliff Richard helped open the door first. His early success proved that British artists could stand on the world stage and compete with anyone. Still, Barry's reflections were not only about admiration. He also spoke honestly about the quiet distance that slowly grew between them over the years, something that puzzled many fans. "We weren't the kind of friends who called each other every day," Barry explained. "But whenever we met, there was always respect. Sometimes life just takes you in different directions." As the Bee Gees exploded in popularity during the 1970s with songs like "Stayin' Alive" and "How Deep Is Your Love," Barry found himself trapped inside a non-stop cycle of touring, recording sessions, interviews, and public appearances. Fame consumed nearly every part of life, leaving little room for personal connections. "When you're on top of the world, you think you have time for everyone," he admitted. But fame moves faster than friendship. Even so, Barry made it clear that his admiration for Cliff Richard never disappeared. "What I've always admired most about Cliff is that he stayed true to himself," Barry said. "He didn't follow trends. He made his own. Even when the world mocked him for being clean-cut or religious, he stood tall. That takes courage." There was deep understanding behind Barry's words. Few people know the cost of authenticity in the entertainment industry better than him. Throughout his career, Barry saw how fame could pressure artists to constantly reinvent themselves just to survive. But Cliff chose a different path. He stayed loyal to his values, his faith, and the kind of music he believed in. Barry hinted that this was something he quietly envied over the years. He never let the stage change his soul, Barry reflected softly. One of the most emotional moments came when Barry spoke about survival and loss, something both men understand all too well. "We've both seen friends go too soon," he said quietly. "Maurice, Robin, Andy, all my brothers. They were my life. And Cliff has lost people too. When you've been in this business as long as we have, you realize that just surviving it is a miracle." His voice carried the sadness of a man who has lived through enormous success and unimaginable grief. Then, speaking about Cliff once more, Barry added, "Cliff's still here, still singing, still smiling. That's strength. That's faith in motion." Barry's comments revealed something deeper than friendship. There was a sense of kinship between two artists who came from an era when music felt more personal and heartfelt. "We're both from a time where music came from the heart, not the machine," Barry explained. "What I love about Cliff is that he still believes in melody, in lyrics that actually mean something. That's rare today." He revealed that over the years, they occasionally exchanged kind words and messages of encouragement. Barry also admitted that seeing Cliff continue to perform inspired him to keep going even after losing his brothers. In the end, Barry Gibb's truth about Cliff Richard was not about scandal, secrets, or controversy. It was about gratitude. It was one music legend paying tribute to another after decades of quiet respect. "People always want drama," Barry said with a smile. "But the truth is simpler. Cliff's a good man, one of the best. He never gave up and he never gave in. That's what I'll always admire about him." At 79 years old, Barry speaks now not as a superstar searching for headlines, but as a survivor honoring someone who understands the true cost of fame. His words remind us that behind the bright lights, sold-out arenas, and screaming fans, there exists a quiet brotherhood among artists who endured the pressure, survived the losses, and stayed true to themselves. For Barry Gibb, finally telling the truth about Cliff Richard was never about revelation. It was about love, respect, and timeless appreciation for a fellow artist who, like him, never stopped believing in the power of music. But when did their quiet respect finally turn into unforgettable musical unity? Keep watching to find out. When music became something bigger than fame. In 2005, the worlds of Barry Gibb and Cliff Richard came together in a moment that reached far beyond music charts and commercial success. The world was still mourning the devastating 2004 Asian tsunami, and artists from every corner of the industry stepped forward to support relief efforts. Among the most powerful projects was the charity single "Grief Never Grows Old," recorded by the One World Project. The lineup itself was unforgettable. Barry Gibb and Cliff Richard stood alongside names like Boy George, John Anderson, and members of The Who. But the recording was about far more than famous names sharing a microphone. It was about healing. It was about raising hope during a time of enormous pain and reminding people that music still had the power to bring comfort when words alone were not enough. For fans, seeing Barry and Cliff together felt deeply symbolic. Barry represented the Bee Gees' worldwide songwriting brilliance, while Cliff stood as one of the defining voices of British pop music. Their appearance on the same project carried a message of unity across generations, genres, and styles. At a time when the industry focused heavily on younger stars and fast-moving trends, these two legends proved that music and compassion never lose their value. Their voices blended together with warmth and sincerity, expressing grief, strength, and hope in equal measure. For many listeners, the song became more than a charity single. It became proof that true artistry can serve a purpose greater than fame or commercial success. Yet their connection did not begin there. A year earlier, in 2004, Cliff Richard released his 36th studio album, Something's Going On. One song immediately captured the attention of both fans and critics alike: I Cannot Give You My Love, written by Barry Gibb and his son, Ashley Gibb. The track carried all the familiar qualities of a Barry Gibb composition. The melody felt emotional and timeless, while the lyrics balanced tenderness with quiet heartbreak. Combined with Cliff's warm and gentle vocal style, the song sounded both classic and fresh at the same time. Barry's involvement went far beyond writing the lyrics and melody. He also played guitar and contributed backing vocals, adding his unmistakable falsetto harmonies to Cliff's performance. The result was a rare musical blend between two artists whose careers had shaped generations of popular music. Even more emotional was the presence of Maurice Gibb on keyboards. Maurice had passed away in 2003, making the recording one of the final musical connections between the Gibb brothers and another legendary British performer. That detail gave the song an added emotional weight that listeners could feel in every note. Although the track achieved chart success in the United Kingdom, its true importance went much deeper than numbers or rankings. It represented mutual admiration between two artists who genuinely respected one another. Cliff admired Barry's songwriting talent, while Barry respected Cliff's remarkable ability to remain relevant through decades of changing musical styles. There was no rivalry between them, no hidden tension, and no pressure from the business side of music. What existed was something much simpler and rarer: honest respect for each other's craft. For fans, the collaboration felt timeless because it came from a place of sincerity. The partnership also reminded audiences of Barry Gibb's incredible versatility as a songwriter. While most people associated him with the Bee Gees' disco era, Barry had also written and produced songs for artists like Barbra Streisand, Dionne Warwick, Celine Dion, and Diana Ross. Still, many felt his work with Cliff Richard carried a special meaning because it united two major figures in British music history. Over the years, their respect for one another quietly continued. In interviews, both men often spoke warmly about each other's work, and music insiders occasionally hinted that Barry had written additional material for Cliff that never reached the public. Time, health concerns, and busy touring schedules eventually prevented further collaborations, but the music they created together still left a lasting impression. As both men entered the later stages of their careers, they proved something important about true artistry. Real musicianship does not disappear with age. It grows deeper, wiser, and more emotional over time. When Cliff sang Barry's lyrics, his voice carried the experience of a lifetime. Barry's harmonies added richness and feeling, creating songs that sounded personal rather than manufactured. Perhaps the most remarkable thing about their connection was how simple it remained. There were no scandals, public feuds, or dramatic headlines. Just two legendary musicians supporting one another through mutual admiration and shared love for music. Today, as Barry continues performing at 79 and Cliff records music well into his 80s, the work they created together remains a quiet but unforgettable part of pop history. Their collaborations remind us that the strongest musical friendships are not built on attention or publicity, but on respect, loyalty, and the ability to touch hearts across generations. Long before global fame, what shaped Barry Gibb into a musical genius? Let's find out. The making of a music legend. Barry Gibb did not slowly discover music over time. In many ways, he was born directly into it. On September 1, 1946, in Douglas on the Isle of Man, a quiet island surrounded by cold seas and narrow stone streets, a child entered the world who would one day help transform popular music forever. Barry Allen Crompton Gibb was the second of 5 children, and the Gibb family home was never a quiet place. His father, Hugh Gibb, loved music deeply and played whenever he had the chance. His mother, Barbara, sang with warmth and emotion that filled every room in the house. Their home was alive with laughter, instruments, and unfinished melodies drifting through the air day and night. Inside that noisy but loving environment, Barry connected with music in a way most children never could. While other boys spent their days playing games outside, Barry was already writing songs. At first, they were simple, but even then, his lyrics carried real emotion. Somehow, even as a child, he already understood heartbreak, longing, and tenderness. More importantly, he knew how to turn those feelings into melody. It was not just natural talent. There was something deeper driving him, something instinctive that never seemed to switch off. When the Gibb family later moved to Manchester, England, Barry's love for music only became stronger. But the biggest turning point came after the family relocated again, this time to Redcliffe in Queensland, Australia. That move changed everything. There, Barry joined forces with his younger twin brothers, Robin Gibb and Maurice Gibb. Together, the three brothers created something completely unique. Their harmonies did not simply blend together. They seemed to melt into one voice, rising and falling with perfect emotion and timing. The Bee Gees were never created by accident or luck. The brothers worked constantly. They rehearsed for hours, studied harmonies carefully, practiced their stage presence, and chased every opportunity they could find. In the beginning, they performed anywhere that would allow them on stage: small clubs, local halls, tiny venues across Australia. It did not matter. They simply wanted people to hear their music. Even then, audiences sensed there was something special about them. Their major breakthrough arrived during the mid-1960s when influential Australian DJ Bill Gates and legendary producer Robert Stigwood recognized the brothers' talent. Suddenly, three young musicians who once performed in small Australian towns were heading back to England, the center of the music world at the time. Once they arrived, everything changed forever. The world was introduced to Bee Gees, and audiences immediately fell in love with their sound. Songs like Massachusetts and To Love Somebody proved they were far more than another pop group chasing success. They were storytellers who knew how to turn emotion into unforgettable music. Barry, as the eldest brother, quickly became the creative backbone of the group. He guided songwriting sessions, helped shape the group's musical identity, and brought confidence to every recording. Before long, his voice, especially his famous falsetto, became one of the most recognizable sounds in modern music history. Then came the 1970s, the decade that transformed Barry Gibb from a successful artist into a global legend. Disco music was beginning to dominate the world, but Barry did not simply follow the trend. He helped define it. The Bee Gees' work on the soundtrack for Saturday Night Fever changed popular music forever. Songs like Stayin' Alive, Night Fever, and How Deep Is Your Love became worldwide anthems. The soundtrack exploded across global charts and eventually became one of the best-selling albums in music history. Dance floors everywhere came alive to the Bee Gees' sound. Awards, platinum records, and worldwide fame followed faster than anyone could have imagined. People did not just listen to their music. They built memories around it. Still, Barry's success reached far beyond the Bee Gees. While many artists struggled to adapt to changing musical styles, Barry moved between genres effortlessly. He wrote and produced major hits for stars like Kenny Rogers and Dolly Parton. Songs such as Islands in the Stream, Chain Reaction, and Guilty became classics on their own. His gift for writing emotional, timeless music earned him a place among the greatest songwriters in history. But behind the awards, fame, and sold-out arenas, another story quietly unfolded. It was a story filled with sacrifice, loyalty, and devastating loss. Because while Barry's career continued to rise higher and higher, life slowly reminded him that success often comes with painful consequences, and before long, that pain became almost impossible to bear. Behind the worldwide success, how much heartbreak could Barry Gibb truly endure? Stay tuned to find out more: the losses that changed Barry Gibb forever. Barry Gibb's life has always been shaped by melody, love, heartbreak, and extraordinary resilience. Behind the legendary success of the Bee Gees stands a man who carried the enormous weight of fame, grief, and responsibility while remaining deeply devoted to both his family and his music. The deaths of his brothers changed him forever. First came the loss of Andy Gibb in 1988. Then Maurice Gibb passed away in 2003, followed by Robin Gibb in 2012. These were not simply painful family tragedies. Each loss removed a piece of the harmony that had defined Barry's entire life. The brothers were more than family. They were creative partners who built a sound that transformed modern pop music forever. Their voices worked together like instruments in the same orchestra, perfectly connected through emotion and instinct. Every song they created carried that rare connection. And with each brother Barry lost, part of his world seemed to disappear with them. Still, he never completely stepped away from music. Instead, Barry carried their legacy forward, turning grief into creativity. His solo work, especially the 2016 album In the Now, revealed a more reflective and emotional side of him. The record felt less like a commercial album and more like a personal diary filled with memories, love, regret, and loss. Through the songs, Barry confronted his own history while trying to hold on to the people he missed most. Even during live performances, Barry often spoke about feeling the presence of his brothers beside him. At times, he described it as though their harmonies still floated through the air around him. Music became more than a profession. It became his lifeline, the one thing that allowed him to keep his brothers alive in spirit. Barry's influence on music history remains enormous. He is one of the few songwriters ever to write or co-write 16 #1 hits in the United States, an achievement that places him among the greatest composers in modern popular music. Over the years, he earned induction into both the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and the Songwriters Hall of Fame. In 2018, he was also awarded a knighthood for his contributions to music and entertainment. His signature falsetto voice became instantly recognizable around the world. Combined with emotional lyrics and soulful melodies, Barry's songs connected deeply with audiences across generations. He was never simply a performer chasing fame. He became a storyteller whose music accompanied weddings, heartbreaks, celebrations, and quiet personal moments for millions of people. But Barry's personal life tells an equally revealing story. In 1966, during the early rise of the Bee Gees, Barry married Maureen Bates. At the time, the group was only beginning its climb toward worldwide fame. Maureen brought stability during those uncertain years and stood beside Barry as his career rapidly expanded. But the pressures of touring, recording, and constant public attention eventually strained the marriage beyond repair. In 1970, they divorced. Although the relationship was short-lived, it taught Barry important lessons about sacrifice, loyalty, and the emotional price that often comes with ambition. Later that same year, Barry's life changed again when he met Linda Gray, a former Miss Edinburgh from Scotland. Their connection was immediate. Linda's calm and grounded personality offered a sharp contrast to the chaos surrounding celebrity life. On September 1, 1970, Barry and Linda married, beginning a partnership that would last for more than 50 years. Over time, Linda became far more than Barry's wife. She became his safe place, his emotional support, and the quiet strength behind his resilience. Together, they raised 5 children: Stephen, Ashley, Travis, Michael, and Alexandra. Away from the spotlight, their home life remained deeply private and centered around family rather than fame. In Linda, Barry found balance. She understood the man behind the global icon and helped shield him from the darker side of the music industry. Barry has often described her as his rock, the person who helped him survive not only the pressures of stardom, but also the unbearable pain of losing his brothers. Their marriage became something rare in the entertainment world, steady, loyal, and untouched by scandal. Even later in life, Barry and Linda chose a quieter existence. spending much of their time at their home in Miami, surrounded by family and memories instead of chasing attention. Their story proves that beyond worldwide fame and legendary success, it is love, loyalty, and stability that truly sustain a person through life's hardest moments. Barry Gibb's journey is ultimately one of endurance. He was shaped by grief, but never destroyed by it. He preserved the Bee Gees' legacy while continuing to build his own, blending vulnerability with extraordinary talent. His life reminds the world that behind the timeless songs and unforgettable performances stands a man guided above all by devotion to music, family, and the brothers whose voices still echo through every note he sings. But before becoming legendary, which voices inspired Barry Gibb's unforgettable musical journey? Keep watching to find out. The voices that shaped Barry Gibb. Long before Barry Gibb became one of the most successful songwriters in music history, he was simply a young boy obsessed with voices, melodies, and harmonies. Every artist who inspired him left a mark on the sound he would later help bring to the world. Those influences became the foundation of the Bee Gees and played a major role in shaping modern pop music itself. In his earliest years performing with a small group called the Rattlesnakes, Barry listened closely to artists who dominated the radio during the 1950s and early 1960s. One of the first stars who caught his attention was Tommy Steele. Steele's energy and stage presence showed Barry how powerful personality could be in music. He was not just singing songs, he was entertaining people, connecting with audiences, and creating excitement every time he stepped on stage. Barry also admired the Mills Brothers, whose smooth harmonies deeply influenced the way he later approached vocal arrangements. Their ability to blend voices so naturally fascinated him from an early age. Even before the Bee Gees existed, Barry was already studying how harmony could create emotion far beyond simple lyrics. But perhaps no group shaped the Bee Gees' early sound more than the Everly Brothers. Barry openly admitted that he and his brothers would often sing in the Everly Brothers style before adding a third harmony of their own. That small adjustment eventually became one of the Bee Gees' defining trademarks. The influence can clearly be heard in songs like New York Mining Disaster 1941, released in 1967. The emotional harmonies, soft storytelling, and haunting atmosphere reflected the brothers' admiration for the Everlys while still creating something original. Barry understood early on that great music does not come from imitation alone. It comes from taking inspiration and turning it into something personal. Other artists also played important roles in shaping Barry's musical instincts. Paul Anka influenced his sense of melody and songwriting structure, while Cliff Richard showed him that British artists could become international stars without losing their identity. Barry often spoke with deep respect about Cliff, admiring both his musical longevity and his professionalism in an industry filled with pressure and distractions. Still, one voice affected Barry more deeply than almost any other. When he first heard Roy Orbison sing Crying, the experience stayed with him forever. "That was it," Barry once said. "To me, that was the voice of God." Orbison's emotional power, vulnerability, and vocal control completely changed the way Barry thought about singing. It was not only about technique, it was about feeling every word. Orbison could make heartbreak sound beautiful, and Barry carried that lesson into his own music for decades afterward. Another singer Barry admired greatly was Frankie Valli. Valli's soaring falsetto became a huge influence on Barry's later vocal style, especially during the Bee Gees' disco years. "Frankie Valli has become one of the hallmark voices of our generation," Barry once explained. "He created a style that we all still strive to emulate." That influence became obvious during the 1970s when Barry's falsetto evolved into one of the most recognizable voices in music history. Songs like Stayin' Alive, Night Fever, and More Than a Woman carried that high emotional intensity that Barry admired in Valli's performances. Yet Barry still made the style completely his own. Beyond pop and rock music, Barry also carried a deep love for country music throughout his life. Even during the Bee Gees' peak success, country melodies and storytelling quietly influenced many of his songs. His unreleased 1970 project, The Kid's No Good, revealed just how connected he felt to that genre. "Country music always inspired us," Barry admitted. "I love Nashville, and I love this music." After losing his brothers, Barry became even more open about exploring the styles he personally loved. Without the pressure of maintaining the Bee Gees' identity, he allowed himself to follow music wherever his emotions led him. Country music offered honesty, simplicity, and emotional storytelling, qualities Barry valued deeply as both a singer and songwriter. Over time, Barry Gibb's influence on music became just as powerful as the artists who once inspired him. In 2007, Q magazine ranked him among the 100 greatest singers, placing him alongside some of the most respected voices in modern music. But Barry's legacy extends far beyond singing alone. His songwriting achievements remain almost unmatched in popular music history. As a member of the Bee Gees, Barry helped build one of the best-selling groups the world has ever seen. When the Bee Gees were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1997, the tribute delivered that night revealed the true scale of their success. Only Elvis Presley, the Beatles, Michael Jackson, Garth Brooks, and Paul McCartney have outsold the Bee Gees. That statement alone placed Barry and his brothers among the absolute giants of music history. Their contribution to the soundtrack of Saturday Night Fever changed the industry forever. The album sold more than 50 million copies worldwide and became one of the biggest soundtracks ever released. For years, it remained the best-selling soundtrack in history until Michael Jackson's Thriller eventually surpassed it. Even today, decades after the Bee Gees first rose to fame, Barry's voice still carries the echoes of the artists who inspired him as a boy. And in many ways, Barry Gibb did more than honor those influences. He became one himself. What do you think about Barry Gibb's revelation? Let us know in the comments section below. In the end, this was never about scandal or rivalry. It was about respect, survival, and two music legends who stayed true to themselves through decades of fame and loss. At 79, Barry Gibb finally revealed the simple truth about Cliff Richard. Behind the fame stood a man he deeply admired. And maybe that quiet respect is far more powerful than any headline ever could be. If you enjoyed this story, like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more untold stories behind music's greatest legends.